reiterated its strong support for the comprehensive reform of Nigeria's decaying tax laws. Government acknowledged the importance of modernizing the tax system to enhance fiscal stability and align with global best practices.
Two, the forum includes a diverse value-added tax slab shall be formed to ensure equitable distribution of resources as follows: 50% based on equality, 30% based on collaboration, and 20% based on cooperation.
Well, there you have it. That story broke yesterday. The governors of Plateau and Adamawa State reading out the resolutions of the Nigerian Governors Forum that has now thrown their weight behind the tax reform bills, agreeing that it was a cake all along, but they have now been able to resolve some of the controversy that they had, especially around the value-added tax. And that's what we're going to be sinking our teeth into this morning. We're going to be having this conversation with two guests, one of them in our studios here. Dr. Taufik Raimi is a development expert and also a business and policy analyst. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining us virtually is Mr. Shuaibu Idris, who's an economist and the managing director, CEO of Timeline Consult Limited. He joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Dr. Idris.
Good morning, my brother, and Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you very quickly, did this resolution, this agreement come as a surprise to you? Are you surprised that they have reached this very quickly?
No, I'm not surprised. It's part of the developments that usually political, gladiators almost always come about. There is, chances that you disagree, and then you jow, and then eventually you settle into, somewhat a form of an agreement. So I'm not surprised that the governors, the Nigerian Governors Forum, come about that. But I think, if any, I would have said this is what they should have done, as opposed to what they did earlier on under the National Economic Council, under the chairmanship of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because I thought it was wrong for them to come out confronting Mr. President to say, withdraw the tax bills. This is what they should have done, but then better late than never.
Well, I don't know what your initial impressions were. I mean, this came totally from out of the blues. Well, we know that they had been meeting, they had been consulting, but what the impression we had gotten was that, the governors were digging in their heels, especially when you listen to someone like Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State. You would have thought that this was going to be a real difficult issue because it had obviously become very political. So what are your reactions, seeing just how, this has now been resolved?
Well, it gladdened my heart. And I think most Nigerians are also relieved that we have prevented an avoidable crisis in our hand, coupled with what Nigerians have been going through, which are obvious. But I'm not surprised that this resolution has come, because sometimes last year, December, I was on one of your programs here, and I did say that when Mr. President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, during the presidential media chat, said that the tax reform bill has come to stay. He wasn't proud like many people had thought. He was simply saying the obvious. And I believe, and I also had it on one of those, your program and elsewhere, that he's a strategist. He's going to, and he also said during the media chat that he's not foreclosing dialogue, collaboration, negotiation, even with the governors, on the gray areas. So that it came like what we call something in the night, could be a surprise.
Like a thief in the night.
But I can tell you definitely that I was anticipating it. I know that we have a visionary leader who believes in having the best for the country. At least this tax reform bill, we know the advantages are gamut, as at the time most of these governors were agitating against it. Most of them have not even studied the bills. So, and I know that once those negotiations behind the scene, even before this two-day retreat, there have been a lot of lobby, there have been a lot of explanation, there have been a lot of communication. So that's why it is I believe that even for any other problem we are confronting in this country, they are not insurmountable. What did we require? We require good vision. We require good collaboration. We require inclusiveness. They also want to be carried along. They don't want to be neglected. Of course, the medium they had used was very antagonistic. So I want to believe that it's a delayed Christmas gift to Nigeria, but it's not denied.
Well, take a look at what had happened. I mean, when you hear the new formula that they have reached to the value-added tax, which was where the bone of contention was, and how a number of states, particularly northern states, felt that they were going to be at a disadvantage. They have now been able to resolve that 50% will be, shared on the basis of equality, 30% on the basis of derivation, and 20% on the basis of population, which is not very different from what we had before.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is sufficient incentive? Because part of what people were looking at is a situation whereby states that had been lagging behind somewhat, would also up the ante with the level of activities, economic activities in their own state.
For me, I would have asked the state governors to be more up and doing, to be more creative in order to increase their IGR, and not to rest completely or most substantially like it has happened over the years on the federal allocation revenue, as it were. I would have loved that they stay with what the bill has proposed. But you see, even if they had stayed with it, this bill is still subject to some amendment consideration at the National Assembly. I believe that is an ongoing conversation. And I also believe that, maybe this is their own card for compromise. In politics or even in organization management, there is a question of give and take. But this is not enough to really ginger them to be able to put on more effort at their state level. I've said that this country, the Nigerians, all that we are expecting in terms of improvement on standard of life, infrastructure, and all that cannot happen if we simply continue to focus on what the federal government is doing. That's why in the last 1 month, and also on your previous program, I said that the total budget of all the states, 36 states of the federation, is just about 26 trillion naira. The federal government budget is 49 trillion naira. Only 3 states in this country has above 1 trillion naira. Lagos, Ogun, and Enugu, possibly. And that's very surprising. Enugu is doing fantastically well.
No, not even Rivers.
Rivers about 1.0 trillion as well. Lagos, 3 trillion. And when you look at all these 3 states I mentioned, their IGR is very substantial. But all other states, we even have states that are less than about 300 billion naira, total budget, not even performance. And we know that most of the budget in Nigeria are not performed to. So the point I'm trying to say here is that the government at subnational still need to do more. They need to adopt philosophies or model like public-private partnership in order to augment the revenue that is coming from the federal and also their own IGR. So I believe that what the tax reform bill has proposed should have been more sufficient.
I want to be able to talk with Mr. Idris on what these figures actually mean. Mr. Idris, so I want to understand this. Equality, derivation, population, and then the percentages that this VAT, the VAT sharing formula, will be allocating. And like we've been showing on the screen, 50% of revenue based on equality, 30% on derivation, and 20% on population. What does that mean on the ground? Let's say I'm from Ekiti State and I'm hearing this. What does that mean? And what does that tell us about what the governors will be getting in this regard?
Yeah, I think basically what that means is let's give a hypothetical figure. Say there is 1 trillion naira that will be shared among the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT. 50% of that, meaning 500 billion naira, will be shared among 36 states of the Federation pro rata, that is on equality basis. So you just divide 500 billion over 36, and then each person will get the same amount. Then you now go back to, the balance of the 500 billion, which is the balance of the 50%. You now take 30% of that and distribute it to according to the ratio of the collection of the VAT, which means states like Lagos, Rivers, Ogun, Kano, and maybe Kaduna and a few others that usually have been able to generate a lot of businesses within their precinct, then they will get, lion's share of that 30% of the collection. And then the 20% that is going to be shared based on other factors will then also be shared to each of the states. So generally, there's not so much significant difference from what we have had in the last, say 15, 20 years. But the major change from the current formula is the percentage of the derivation from what it currently is, I think about 20% to 30%. I think this is a marked improvement, and we should be able to, to say states like Lagos and Rivers, I hope they will be appeased so that on the basis of this understanding, the pending Supreme Court case that this state have taken as regards the issue of sales tax or value-added tax, then they will eventually withdraw that court case. Because if the court that case is allowed to see the light of the day, chances are we will have significant challenges. Because everyone knows that the sales tax is supposed to be collected by states, but we have an OPEC system in Nigeria, in the sense that because of the strategic advantages of these two states, they have the seaports and they have access to the fact that preponderance of industries are located in Lagos, Ogun axis, as well as some part of the south-south rivers, and a bit of Kano, some part of Kano and Kaduna. These advantages would have given them a larger chunk of the sales tax, because if they were allowed to just be the one to charge these taxes, then no other state will get anything. What is surprising is, if you look at the statistic, 30, 50, 30, 20, there is no mention of the federal revenue that is collecting the money. There are other, deductions that it used to be, and no mention of those deductions were made in this understanding. One will wonder, this sharing, is it after those deductions? And then no mention of the share of the federal government, because currently what we have is a portion of the VAT is also enjoyed by the federal government. And I think, what came out from the Governors Forum, we probably haven't had the last of it. And I do hope that when the details are out, it wouldn't be a bit of contentious, so-called agreement. But what is clear is what Taufik has said, is Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a deal maker, he's a politician, he's been around for years. So I'm happy he's able to engage the governors and to be able to come out with this, agreement.
I want to be able to also get your thoughts on the rejection of the value-added tax, increase in value-added tax. So that because we've looked at some of the things that they have agreed on, but there were some basic things in those tax reform bills that they rejected, one of them being the increase in VAT. Let's talk a little bit about that, Mr. Shaibu Idris. What does that mean for the Nigerian people? They sold it to us yesterday as though this is great news for us. No one wants to hear of an increase in anything at this particular point in time. What were your thoughts on the rejection of any increase in value-added tax?
Well, as an economist and a keen observer of our environment and our events, and then a comparison between Nigeria and a number of other countries, particularly countries of Africa, that our tax to GDP ratio is rather very, very low. Yes, I do agree that maybe the timing for an increase is not right when we're just coming out of, say, massive devaluation, removal of subsidies in the petroleum products, as well as energy cost and other what have made us to be experiencing cost of living crisis. But I think it is probably wrong to categorically say the governors disagree with increase. I would have thought that the agreement should be a little specific. Yes, there may be need to increase these taxes, but the timing is wrong. Maybe end of this year, maybe first quarter of next year. I don't like what the bill proposed. There was a kind of stratification and a bit of staggering of the increase. I thought, the agreement should have been a little categorical categorical as to, yes, we agree to the increase, and not a categorical statement that, no, we disagree on the increase. I'm a Nigerian, I live here, and I feel the pains. But I still feel that there should have been a bit of a give and take on that particular aspect of the proposed tax bill. What I mean is, like I did say, a bit of staggering and a delay in the implementation of the increase, but not a capital no as is being proposed or is being dished out by the governors.
I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Raimi. I mean, there was the other big elephant in the conversation yesterday, and it was the rejected terminal clauses for development levies in the tax reform bills. And then they emphasized the need for sustained funding for agencies like TET Fund, NASENI, and NITDA to support national development.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Kela. What I want to say about this is that, you see, when we say we are doing reform, and we say we want to stay on status quo, there's nothing will be new, So all these critical areas, whereas negotiation can be carried out, we should not, the governors and other stakeholders, should look at the merits about them. Are you getting me? Not to say no to this, because that means that we are going to return factually almost an old bill back to what it was before. The development levy, yes, we should stop. Nigeria should modernize its tax system. Nigeria should modernize the way we do things. The world has moved beyond where we are today, where I would describe as a feeding bottle economy, where every time you just think that for the next 10, 20 years, the way things have been done should just remain status quo. I quite agree with Aziz when he talks about certain things can be staggered. And that staggering of implementation of some of these have even been proposed in the bill. The development bill that levy that we are talking about, which solely up to today is being enjoyed only by TET Fund as an education tax going to develop our university, polytechnic, colleges of education. The proposed bill did not say they are phasing it out completely at this moment. It only says that between now and 2026, they will get 50% of that development levy. Whereas other agencies that are also in need of funding will have the remaining 50%. And by 2027, the TET Fund will get 66.7%, thereabout. Only by 2030, when it's expected that TET Fund should be able to create revenue, just like what the JAMB is doing. You know, we said that even the current debate that's going on in the National Assembly is asking that federal government should stop giving revenue to JAMB because they are making money. If you make money, you can spend it. In fact, we should get to a point that you make enough. That's why I have proposed that most of the ministries should not just be an expenditure center, just coming to spend money. This attitude of leaders thinking that ministers, directors, thinking that, oh, their own goal is how to collect from federal government and spend. No, we must be innovative. We must be creative. If we must spend money, we must create money. So I believe that all those areas that they have rejected, you know, their position yesterday is still not low. We must tell our viewers across the globe that while we appreciate their endorsement, but the most important news about it is that they have sought better, they've seen the vision, they are ready to support the president's tax reform bill, but they have reservation. So it is not still law yet. They are still going to be, it's already, they've also even okay that the processes should continue at National Assembly, you know. So there will still be negotiation, there will still be understanding. So I believe that in the end, we will strike a balance. But my point here is that we should not think that we are reforming when most of the critical points that we have said we want to change are being asked to be left as status quo. This reform bill, we have 4 bills, as you know. It will help manufacturers. You know, the CIT, we must mention, corporate income tax, is now being asked to be reduced from 30% to 25%. Even though that 25% is below, is still higher than the global competitiveness, you know, which is 23%. So I want to believe that there are a lot of, and if this bill is passed very shortly, you know as well that there is also going to be room for amendment in future when we see that there are more realities about it.
Exactly. We'll get to that conversation in a bit because it also has to be a sort of document that can evolve, isn't it? Because that was the problem with our former tax laws, was that they couldn't evolve. But I want to be able to get Mr. Idris's thoughts on that. Are we sticking with the past or are we moving forward? Because well, the seminal clauses for development levies in the tax reform bills, sustained funding, the need for sustained funding for agencies like TETFund and NASENI and NIDDA to support national development. I want to know what your thoughts are on that, Mr. Idris. Are we sticking to the past or are we moving forward?
No, I think, you know, I like to draw the attention of Mr. Taufik Rahimi that there's a popular phrase that goes, you know, when it ain't broken, why mend it? You know, so the fact that the laws, the taxation laws have been archaic for over, you know, 30 years, 40 years, we haven't rejuvenated the tax laws. That doesn't mean that it has to be rejuvenated, kind of. So we can always leave it when it's unbroken, no need to mend it. However, I think this is where, you know, the governors have made, you know, a mistake. You know, on one side, you are saying don't increase VAT. On another side, you are saying go ahead with development levy. And what the tax bill proposed was removal of this or discontinuation of charging of these levies, and then an increase in, you know, in the VAT. So if you observe, like a typical accountant will tell you, the debit and the credit, the left and the right-hand side of the equation are being touched, meaning on one side you are removing development levies and then lessen the tax burden, and on the other side you are enhancing, you know, the tax rate. So what you are losing from, you know, discontinuation of the collection of levies, you are gaining from a slight or marginal increase in the tax rate. I think we need to come out of the shackle, like he did say, Taufik said, a feeding bottle economy. We are just feeding people. Guys, you know, institutions, organizations, governments must rise up to do fundamentally 2-3 things. Number one, we need to reduce, you know, the excessiveness of our spendings so that the cost of governance can reduce. We need to manage the tax system. Like he did say, the company's income tax is way out of the ordinary. global best practices is somewhere around 15-20%. The highest is 23%. Ours is 30%. This is a disincentive to investors to come and invest in Nigeria and provide employment opportunities. And last but not the least is to be a little frugal in the management of our resources. I don't see a rationale where you could say a TED fund or a NASEMI should be able to generate income. Maybe NASEMI because of their activities, the research and the development of research findings that they are supposed to do. Maybe they can be marketing them and selling and then earning revenue. But Tertiary Education Trust Fund is very unlikely going to be able to be generating any money. And what the tax bill proposal failed to address is, while you are proposing that the source of the funding for these agencies will be discontinued from these revenue generating taxes, the bill proposal did not make adequate provision as to how do we intend to fund these agencies. Unless otherwise, Mr. President is going to propose a massive, rejuvenation of our educational system. Otherwise, it's practically impossible for the universities to sustain themselves when you have denied them the right to be independent, you have denied them the right to generate income, to be able to be sustainable within their own system. And you also, Mr. President, should have insisted going forward, the states are supposed to be funding primary education and secondary education. How much is the allocation to the educational sector at that level, the primary and secondary school education? Why should, for example, the Universal Basic Education Commission be funding, say, secondary school education, when the state should massively enhance their IGR, the Internet Generated Revenues, to be able to fund the education? So we needed a bit of a major discourse before the bills came out, which was lacking. And glory be to God, the delay we have had has given us, of course, the conversation that we needed to have before the bills came out. But unfortunately, the conversation came in more on a polarized manner, North versus South, regional or political parties. This PDP is against this, APC governors are, some of them are in support. But if you read the body language, 1 week ago, 10 days ago, some of the governors that were so vocal and vociferous against the bill started saying, oh, we are seeing, the goodness in some of this bill. Abdullah Sule, for example, of Nasarawa State, Zulum of Borno State were quite vocal and vociferous in terms of their opposition on the proposed bills. But in the last 10 days, 14 days, they appear to gradually and slightly shift position, at least from what I have heard from the...
what I want to know, and I'll come to you again, I think I should just come to Mr. Raimi here. I don't know whether you're still comfortable, because when this conversation actually started from was the Northern Governors Forum. There are 19 Northern Governors before it went to the National Economic Council. So on Tuesday, they held their meeting, that's the Northern Governors Forum, and on Thursday, when the National Economic Council meeting they held that, oh, withdraw this thing so we can have a conversation. And then the president swiftly responded and said, no, it's already in the National Assembly, go and have your conversation there. Whatever conversation there needs to be will be done there. Are you comfortable now, because this is taken for granted that all the governors, because we're hearing it under the aegis of the Nigerian Governors Forum, are you convinced, looking at the number of governors we're seeing at this retreat, that the Nigerian the Northern Governors Forum, will be totally behind this? Would you take the representation you're seeing there as the voice also of the Northern Governors Forum?
Oh, well, you have asked a very important question, honestly. But I have great confidence in this. There are three things in the past that I predicted on your program in other places. When the issue of refinery was being doubted, I said, no, it's going to work. Now we are saying that it's working. That's private refinery and also Nigeria refinery. Two, I also said that food inflation will come down. With this bill being passed, 0% on agricultural products and other, it will pass. Three, the issue of Northern Governors Forum, they are part of who spoke yesterday. Just like my colleague at the off station had mentioned, we know those that were very vocal about it.
Exactly. Are you
not that I want to believe they are.
Are you
now
concerned that they're not here?
No.
They're not represented
no,
here.
they are represented. Like yesterday, I saw the governor of Nasarawa. He made a speech. He was very vocal. He was even on channel all through the problem, the time of this, I won't call it crisis, I would just say misinformation and misunderstanding, you know. But he was one of those who spoke yesterday to say, this is a way to go, it is good. But they have reservation with the who want their National Assembly people to look at. The Bauchi, the only person that we have not heard from is the Bauchi State Governor, His Excellency Bala Mohammed, who again, incidentally, did not attend the pally that was held in Lagos during the Christmas. That's their homage to the president. And when people wanted to politicize it, I think his press people came on board and said, no, he couldn't attend. He was the only governor that was not there. He couldn't attend because he lost his stepmother. That was what was said. Except for him, I do not believe that there are many others that were very critical. The 19 northern governors, I believe they already have agreed to whatever their colleagues have jointly agreed. I believe at this point, they are going to be wearing their nationalistic cap rather than regional cap. Don't forget.
The question will be at what cost? Because now those who are saying that what we're going to be saying will be a watered-down version of these bills.
You know, I actually mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's why I said that it's not to say don't do this. Yes, I agree with my colleague that why do you change a system that works for you? But why must you not change the system that is not working for you? The current tax system is not only long overdue to be for review. We have seen complexity, a tax system that levy businesses about 90 different taxes, at a time to 60. Now, this particular tax bill is going to reduce all those taxes, harmonize it to not more than 20 tax heading, to even single digit. The presidential, this bill is proposing that at most we will have about 10 tax heading, so that businesses can predict how much they are to budget every year. Why are businesses being killed in Nigeria? Why are companies leaving? One of it is our tax system. You know, so there is no, do not forget that I believe these are people, are governors, they are going to be leaders that also have realized that it is for the good of everybody. Nigerians deserve to have a better life. When we have this tax pass, it will increase our revenue, and so more money. But my concern that I want to advise Mr. President is that Nigeria is not bereft of laws. What has always happened is in the implementation. This harmonization that we have had, I hope when this tax bill is passed, we will start hearing some local government across our roads, across the country, still putting a barricade and say, no, they are not aware. That is why I'm asking for more orientation. And you press, you have done very well. Even your channels had a town hall meeting anchored by Sheung Okinbaloye at the time during the Imbro Glow, where he brought Taiwo Oyedele, who is the presidential chairman for the tax reform. Other stations also have done so. This is exactly what we should do. There should be more orientation. There should be more. People want to know, how does this benefit us? Individuals that are earning less than 1 million, any employee that is any more less than 1 million in Nigeria will not pay tax under this arrangement. Those are the kind of things that I think we should continue to say. So the Northern Governors Forum, alongside all other stakeholders that are agreed before, because they weren't carried along, I think they have seen light and they want to support Mr. President. We professionals too, we must support Mr. President.
I mean, on a professional level, what's the next move? What happens next? Because this is just the Nigerian Governors Forum. It doesn't mean that it's made into law.
You're right. On professional level, we'll continue, like the Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, their DG was on another program yesterday, whereby he was even asked that they are dissatisfied with certain clauses. He refuted it that, no, they are not dissatisfied. It's only that they have observation. They wanted the CIT that I mentioned earlier, corporate income tax, to be reduced further because Ghana is at 25% as we speak. That's why most companies are leaving to Ghana. Egypt is 27%. Nigeria currently is at 30%. And you know money, foreign investment goes to where there is best opportunity, security, political will, infrastructure.
Yeah, my question really was about processes. Now that the Nigerian Governors Forum have come up with some kind of arrangement, so what's the next process?
The next process is that the bill is already at the National Assembly. It wasn't withdrawn. It has no reason to be withdrawn because it's an executive bill. Now, the National Assembly, the Senate will continue to, they will now set a date for public hearing. That's what I believe, alongside the House of Rep. You know, House of Rep has not also gone their own second reading. I believe the next thing is for them to do second reading. Public views, even all other stakeholders that have not also been satisfied, they have opportunity. That was even what I suggested the last time.
So this document, this agreement by the Nigerian Governors Forum.
Yes.
So this document goes to the National Assembly? Is that what you're saying?
It's already the National Assembly.
No, it's already
these adjustments. These adjustments.
Those are the part of that's their own that's their own submission to the public hearing.
Okay.
That will make, now they will condense it together and take it maybe through their own representation to the National Assembly and say, this is what area we believe you should look at.
So that's the next phase, the public hearing.
That's the next phase, public hearing. Once the public hearing, which is an amalgamation of aggregation of various stakeholders' opinions, even those that are not mentioned here, they will go there. Civil society, even the media, even individual can go, even professional body, they can go, different professional body. Once that is submitted to the National Assembly, but remember, even the National Assembly are committed to moving Nigeria forward. One of the ways to do so is through this tax reform bill, which I believe has more merit than demerit, many of which will benefit every one of us, especially if those provisions are well implemented. There are 4 bills, the Nigeria tax bill, the Nigeria Administrative Bill, the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, the Joint Revenue Board. All those have now streamlined how our tax should be done in Nigeria, and I believe we're going to benefit more, both at individual level, at government level, and at state, local government, you know, in terms of the revenue that will come, the streamlining of the processes in the head.
Well, Mr. Idris, let me take you up on something you already mentioned, which was this TED fund, which was supposed to have wounded down, you know, in 2030. There was big controversy. ASU was totally unhappy about that because they said they fought for TED fund, and it was supposed to be their own, will I say, their own reassurance from the federal government that certain infrastructure will be taken care of. But right now, we see that that is now one of the areas of compromise because what the federal government was proposing through these reforms was that monies that were going to TED fund should now begin to go to NEL fund, that's the student loan fund. For you, do you think that this is this a setback of sorts for that loan fund that has now been set up? Because it does appear that there is an ideological question being raised here as to what we see for funding for our tertiary institutions, particularly the federal tertiary institutions.
I don't think it's a setback. Government purse is large. Government will certainly find an avenue to fund the Nigerian student loans mechanism. However, I don't also subscribe to the continuous existence of certain government agencies. Quite a number of the agencies that we have today and we are creating, to my mind and from my little understanding of governance, they are unnecessary. Why do we need, for example, a tertiary education trust fund if the allocation from the budget to educational sector is sufficient? The only reason why the TET fund was created and the education tax deduction is done from businesses is because the revenue system we've been implementing is a bit opaque, and generally Nigerians evade and avoid tax with reckless abandon. But the avoidance and the evasion is so common. And like my colleague, Mr. Taufik, did say, we have a multiplicity of taxes. Local government charge tax, the state government does, and then the federal government. But this is coming because we are running a presidential system of government, the so-called independent of the states and the local government. But to what extent, to what level can you really say someone is independent when he or she is waiting for a handout from, let's say, the big brother, quote and unquote, that is the federal government. So yes, the state could be said to be independent, but they are dependent when it comes to what to run the system. So how independent is that independent? I believe, when eventually the National Assembly gets cracking with these recommendations from the Nigerian Governors Forum, they will have to find an avenue to state categorically how and where funding for the Nigerian loans, student loans system will come from. Otherwise, there will be a major challenge. And I will love to see in the nearest future, just like what we have seen in the tax system, like Mr. President should come up with, a bit of a process to rejuvenate our educational laws. But these laws are archaic and old, and we need to change them. There are quite a number of areas that, like I did say, that we probably don't need them. For example, why do we need the regional commissions that we are setting up? Are we saying that the ministries are useless? So you want to wind up tertiary education trust fund, but you are also creating other kind of, if you like, drain pipes, excuse my choice of phrase, just like the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. Such funding for even the administration of some of these commissions needs to be, looked at. The Oreshanye report is there. We expect President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to implement that report, quickly and urgently, so that there could be drastic reduction in cost of governance through the merger of quite a number of agencies. So why you are asking one agency that has the operation of which has been somewhat successful and people could see, the impact of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, but other agencies that you have reported before you are not touching them. So sometimes one wonders, where is Mr. President's, desire in this restructuring of, the entity called Nigeria? I like to mention also that the northern governors, the 19 northern governors, are part and parcel of the Nigerian Governors Forum. I don't see them disagree with what is coming out from the Nigerian Governors Forum, because they are also, there, and they were at the discourse. I happen to have had, a series of conversations with a number of them on this particular, tax bills. And I think, some of the, agreement that has now been reached, and which will eventually be part of the input in the tax processing, tax bill process, will also be, given to the National Assembly. And I don't see a rancorous relationship. And I want to hasten to advise that I think we should stop, regionalizing, comment. The fact that someone from the north comes out to say, I fundamentally disagree with this, let's not look at it from a regional basis. Ekiti State would have suffered just like, say, Zamfara State or Taraba State.
Just a moment, Mr. Idris. So perhaps that would have been the situation, but you know, it would seem that from the very start, this conversation was going to be regionalized. When you have the Northern Governors Forum being the one to voice and withdraw their support on the initial basis, I mean, in the initial case. So that was already in the works. But it does appear now that looking at the fact that the support is coming from the Nigerian Governors Forum, there's some nationalistic support, so to speak. Do you think that will eventually help it push it through the National Assembly?
It will, will certainly help. There is now clearly a unity of purpose, and there is a united team now, everybody lining up. What we hope and pray is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will see this effort and agree to some of these suggestions. Because, you know, this suggestion from the Nigerian Governors Forum, it didn't come arising from discussions or understanding reach with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. No, they did come arising from conversation reach with the leadership of the National Assembly. So this is just an input, a suggestion by the Nigerian Governors Forum on this particular topic. Unlike
Mr. Tawo, just to interrupt you again, Mr. Idris, Mr. Tawo says he believes this bill, he was addressing LCCI, will be passed, or these bills will be passed in the first quarter of this year. Are you optimistic that it will be?
With this development, I'm very much optimistic that the bills will be passed within the first quarter, certainly.
Oh, because okay. What about you, Mr. Raimi, Dr. Raimi?
Yeah, yes, I quite believe that it will happen, and my belief is rooted on this. Even before the break, you can see the National Assembly, of course, two hierarchy. The Senate had already done their first reading, the second reading, waiting for public hearing. And you know, after public hearing and review of the outcome of public hearing is the vote on it to be approved. The House of Rep, of course, they have also expressed willingness, you know, to accelerate consideration of this bill. There are two things they said they will be doing at this early time of the year. The passage of the annual bill, the budget, you know, which they slated that maybe by end of this month, you know, and that's why they have suspended plenary in order for committees to be meeting, which they have been doing, drilling those ministers, asking questions, which we believe will lead to a better revised document. That's the budget. So the next will be this tax bill. And so I want to believe that it will be passed within this quarter so that we can begin to start the implementation. And I also want to ask Mr. President, of course, he's a strategic and methodical visionary leader, like I said earlier. He already has his plan. Let this plan start because Nigeria can't wait. Honestly, the ultimate of all this goodwill that we are advocacy we are also doing is how does it affect the standard of living of Nigerians.
That's a big question.
The revenue has increased since last year. People are asking at the state level that they have not seen much impact. How does this revenue, this tax bill ultimately touch every sector of our national life? And I believe it will happen. I have so much confidence in it.
Well, we'll certainly watch and see how the tax reform bills eventually fare in the National Assembly, whether this is the major hurdle for them to cross or whether there will be another hurdle. You never can tell.
We'll watch. There are different stakeholders, but this one is what we call in development critical stakeholders.
So this hurdle. Well, we'll see about that. Well, we have to, ride on your own optimism. We'll see how it eventually does. Dr. Taufeeq Raimi, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily. He's a development expert, business and policy analyst. Thank you for your time with us this morning. And also Mr. Shuaibu Idris, who is an economist and also the managing director, CEO of Timeline Consult Limited, joining us via Zoom from Lagos. Thank you so much for speaking with us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.